On January 4th, 2010, Hulk Hogan made his epic debut to TNA Impact on the Impact Zone. And to celebrate the arrival of Hulk Hogan, TNA decided to host its first 2-hour Impact. And not only that, they would hold it on Monday night, in direct competition with WWE, holding it an hour early before WWE Raw is War. That episode was a sign of things to come for the company. Its first matchup was an Ultimate X Asylum match. Think of it like an elimination chamber without the chambers. The last two such matches held in TNA were pay-per-view events, and were very good considering who were in it. Sadly, the match would end by DQ because Homicide used a baton. This would also lead up to the arrival of one Jeff Hardy, who was currently on the outs with WWE and awaiting his trial date for his drug possession charge. As the night went on, several people made their debuts in TNA. Among them, not just Hulk Hogan, but Eric Bischoff, also Scott Hall and Sean Waltman, former members of a group of the Outsiders, as well as members of the NWO. Not to mention the Nasty Boys also made their debut. Why, I'll never know. As well as Bubba the Love Sponge, a fat, overbearing radio show host who knows next to nothing about the wrestling business and was only there because he's good friends with Hulk Hogan. Then that night, even though it ended with a spectacular match between AJ Styles and Kurt Angle, it was an overall failure, despite how Hulk Hogan would want to hype it. As time went on, it was clear that something was wrong with TNA. The match quality was severely lacking. More and more useless old guys were getting the spotlight over the younger, more established talent. Homegrown talents like Shark Boy, like Jay Lethal, like the Motor City Machine Guns, like AJ Styles were being pushed to the side in making room for the newer, more Hogan-esque talent. But people were still optimistic. That is until the first pay-per-view under the new Hogan-Bischoff regime saw the biggest and perhaps the most hated change in TNA: the removal of the six-sided ring. Now, I will tell you that every professional wrestling company needs something to identify them with, something that the fans can recognize. If you look at a product, if you mention a product, it has to invoke an image that the fans will automatically recognize and attune with that company. And for TNA, it was the six-sided ring. It's a ring that's synonymous with TNA. Some very great matches happened in that six-sided ring. And Hogan and Bischoff removed it. The fans were upset, but Hogan didn't want to hear it. He merely said, and I quote, that professional wrestling, real professional wrestling, takes place inside of a four-sided ring. So in essence, Hulk Hogan was saying that everything that the TNA originals had done for the past 5-6 years, all the blood and sweat and tears, all the matches that they busted their asses for, all the injuries they suffered in that ring were not real wrestling, because he didn't recognize it as real wrestling. This was a sign that Hogan really didn't care. This was a beginning of what I would become to call the transition between TNA and WCW version 2. As time progressed, more and more old superstars began coming in, taking precedence over the younger talent, such as the team of the Nasty Boys getting title shots. Why would the Nasty Boys get title shots? They can barely wrestle as is. Like I said, they are only there because Knobbs is a good friend of Hulk Hogan, and he promised him a check. Scott Hall's the substance abuse was hindering his ability to work, but yet they still kept him around for months before letting him go. Sean Waltman, even though he was still a little bit jumpy in the ring, was still not at the level that he should have been at for TNA. Then as time went on, the only redeeming old guy there was Ric Flair. Now I know what you're saying, shintigercurl, but Ric Flair's retired. He's old. Why are you not getting on him? Simple. Because ever since he joined TNA, Ric Flair has only done one thing: push the younger talent. He got into AJ Styles' corner, and by doing so, not only did he push him to be a better world champion, but he made him a better heel. He made him gave him a better presence on the mic, better heel charisma, as so to speak. Sure, the robe was a little bit much, but you can't say that Ric Flair didn't impart some of his style into AJ, giving him a new swagger almost. Now he had the mic skills to back up his incredible ring skills. Then we have Fortune, a group made of nothing but young and up-and-coming talent. Beer Money Incorporated, Kazarian, Douglas Williams, Matt Morgan. All of these guys could be future world champions. Flair did nothing but create a group around himself to push them to the forefront. He created a group that should be the ideal essence of what TNA should be: new and up-and-coming talent. And then there was his feud with Jay Lethal. Sure, he got in the ring to fight the guy, but he built him up. This legitimized Jay Lethal, who went from a joke to an up-and-coming talent that could be world champion one day. And then we move on to the They storyline. Perhaps one of the dumbest, most unplanned, least thought out storylines in professional wrestling. Basically, it was a grand master plan to screw over everyone in TNA. Now, the plan was simple. At least they wanted to present it that way. Eric Bischoff and Hulk Hogan wanted to illegally have Dixie Carter sign over rights to TNA to them, so they could run it the way they wanted to, and their poster boy would be Jeff Hardy. All the while having Abyss, being the crazy monster that he is, talk about they are coming. They are going to take over TNA. They will make things right. Also, all the while connecting into this storyline is Sting and Kevin Nash talking about how Hogan and Bischoff were pulling the wool over people's eyes. Instead of outright telling them what the plan was, they simply got into long-winded promos about deception. They never really revealed anything telling about what they were planning. And this was another flaw of this plan. And also the whole thing about making Jeff Hardy champion. Now mind you, Hulk Hogan brought in RVD to be his hand-picked world champion over AJ Styles, who was a heel. Then, under Hogan's orders, Abyss destroys RVD, thus making the title vacant. Then he throws a tournament to who will be the next, using the top 10 rankings, which were rendered completely obsolete at this point, to crown a new world heavyweight champion. Then, if it was to make Hardy world champion, then why not put it so that Hardy would have a better advantage? At any point in this tournament, he could have lost, and then the whole plan would have been scrapped. But no. The whole plan culminated at Bound for Glory, with Hardy screwing over Mr. Anderson and Kurt Angle to become world champion. Now, again, why would Hogan screw over his hand-picked champion to have a hand-picked champion? I don't get it. It even goes even further when it's just a very it is just quintessential what TNA is all about now. It is very, how would I say this, telling about where Hogan and Bischoff's minds are. That pretty much they make it all about themselves. That the main group, Immortal, is made up of people who can't wrestle. In my mind, Abyss hasn't done a good match yet. Jeff Jarrett, well, he's in his waning years, and Hardy is, well, what can I say? You all know. And what about him? What about Fortune? Fortune was all a part of it, and thus the hottest heel group in professional wrestling, the future of TNA, get reduced to nothing more than being lackeys for a bunch of guys who don't even possess half their talent. So now look where TNA is now. A champion we have a champion who for some reason feels the need to constantly do large amounts of drugs and talk bad about a guy whose entire life is staying away from alcohol and drugs. We have two owners who felt they were in the right to screw over a woman on national TV, screw over and take over her company for no reason whatsoever, and then threaten physical bodily harm against said woman. This coming from Hulk Hogan, the icon of an entire generation of wrestling fans. How far have you fallen, Hogan? I know he was going through a bitter divorce, but there's no reason to threaten bodily injury on a woman whose company you outright admitted that you stole. The tag team division, while strong, is not what it used to be. The Knockouts, once considered to be the antithesis of the Divas division in TNA in WWE, is now nothing more than an utter and complete joke. And the X Division title, the crown jewel of the highlight of TNA Impact, is now being reduced to a plaything, done and not even bothered to be defended anymore. This is what TNA has come to, and it saddens me to the point where I want to cry, because I love TNA. I bleed TNA. If I had a choice of going to any company that I wanted to go as a professional wrestler, I would have chosen TNA. But not now. I don't want to go to TNA. And right now, a lot of wrestlers are getting out of TNA. There is strong possibility that Samoa Joe is getting out of TNA. It's just saddening that it has come to this. And like my friends in the WrestleCast has said, I fear that this may be the last year for TNA. If the direction that Hogan and Bischoff continue to take this company continues, I fear that TNA will be out of business next year in 2011, if not sooner. Because someday, someone at Spike TV is going to wake up, look at the product that they're producing, and say, "This is bullshit!" So Hogan and Bischoff and Dixie, I hope you're watching this, because you really need to learn that even that Hogan and Bischoff, you don't know what professional wrestling is. You have no idea what it is. You're just stroking your cocks just so you can feel good about yourselves. And Dixie, you're a nice woman, but you don't know much about professional wrestling enough to leave it in the hands of two men who were pretty much responsible for driving WCW into the ground and running it out of business and being absorbed into the WWE. Many of its wrestlers getting phased out, its prestigious history being wiped clean from the face of the earth. And I fear that's what's going to happen to TNA. I pray for the success of the wrestlers in TNA. But TNA is the company. You're on borrowed time. Because as much many marks out there as there is that you have, one day they're gonna wake up. Because no matter how much you dress up a shit sandwich, no matter what kind, you could put the finest bread, baked fresh from the oven, made from whole wheat grains, fresh Parmesan and provolone cheese, cover it in Grey Poupon so it'll be fancy and taste good. No matter how much you dress up a shit sandwich, it's still gonna be eating shit. And the thing about eating shit, eventually people get tired of eating shit. And then they're just gonna throw it away. So take heart, TNA. Listen to these words of advice. You have two choices. Go back to your roots. Go back to what brought you to this show. Go back to what made TNA TNA. Or two, you can go out of business. You can join WCW and ECW as fond memories of what professional wrestling used to be. I'm shintigercurl, that dude in the straw hat, and this is Joe. Say goodbye, Joe.